Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, meine lieben Geschwister.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Islamic Explanation, a place where we together increase knowledge, strengthen faith, and draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our latest videos. Hopefully what is conveyed will be a charity and benefit us all. Pierre Vogel was born on July 20th, 1978, in a small town called Frechen, located in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. This town is not very big, but it is known as a quiet area, and the majority of its citizens hold fast to strong Christian traditions and values. Pierre was raised in a devout Christian family, a fairly conservative environment, and highly upholds the values of discipline, hard work, and steadfastness of principle. Since childhood, he has been known as an active, energetic, and restless child. In many ways, Pierre shows a strong personality. He is not only intelligent, but also brave. However, one thing that stands out the most about him since he was a teenager is his love for the world of sports, especially boxing. His interest in boxing began when he was very young. He was inspired by legendary world boxers, such as Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, although at that time he did not know anything about their spiritual background. For Pierre, boxing is not only about physical strength, but also mental, strategy, and resilience. When he was in his teens, he started to train seriously. He spent hours at the gym and boxing hall. Pierre was known as a diligent and persistent teenager. Unlike other teenagers his age who played more, Pierre chose to live a disciplined life, focusing on training, diet, and fighting techniques. His hard work paid off. Pierre started to participate in competition after competition, from local, regional, to national levels. He quickly rose in the world of professional German boxing. Imagine, in 7 official matches, Pierre was never defeated. He even won 2 of them by KO, knockout. This perfect record made his name widely known among German boxing fans. Coaches and sports observers began to look at him as a potential future star, a talented young boxer who could break through to the international level if he continued to develop. His success in the ring made Pierre praised by many people. He has an ideal body, deadly punching power, and agile movements. He is not just a fighter, but a true athlete who knows how to maintain his physical performance well. But behind all his fame as a professional boxer, Pierre has a very rigid outlook on life towards Islam. As a Christian who was raised in a relatively exclusive and homogeneous environment, Pierre grew up with various negative stereotypes about Muslims. He viewed Islam as a foreign, harsh religion and incompatible with the Western values that he adhered to. In fact, in his youth, Pierre was known as a figure who was quite vocal in opposing Islam. For him, Islam is a symbol of backwardness, intolerance, and cultural backwardness. However, who would have thought destiny would take him on an extraordinary spiritual journey? From a professional boxer who was praised by many people, from someone who was very anti-Islam, Pierre Vogel actually turned around 180 degrees and chose to embrace the religion he used to hate. Pierre's life began to change slowly. It all started simply. At that time, he began to interact with several Muslim friends in his neighborhood. At first, he was awkward. There was a feeling of suspicion, maybe even a little scared, because all this time he had been fed a bad image of Muslims by the media and his social environment. But curiosity conquered everything. Pierre began to notice. His Muslim friends were friendly, polite, and honest. They were very careful about cleanliness, speech, and behavior. They even treated Pierre with great respect, even though they knew that Pierre himself viewed Islam negatively. This confused Pierre and made him wonder, how can these people be so calm and kind when their religion is always branded badly in the media? From that curiosity, Pierre began to find out about Islam, not from television, not from biased articles, but directly from the original source. He began to read Islamic books, asked honest questions, and opened his mind little by little. He began to realize that many things he had heard about Islam so far were not true. One of the books that left the most impression on him was the German translation of the Quran. Initially, he only intended to read it as a form of research, to find out what the contents of the holy book were. But it turned out what he found far exceeded his expectations. Every time he read verse after verse, Pierre felt like he was being guided, invited to a dialogue, not ordered. The verses of the Quran do not only talk about worship and law, but also about reason, creation, compassion, and humanity. He discovered that Islam is not only a religion that regulates rituals, but also a way of life, ethics, and the purpose of human life. Pierre once said, "I don't find a single contradiction in the Quran. Everything makes sense. Everything is interconnected. I can't stop reading." Day by day, he read deeper. Verse after verse shook his heart. He who was originally hard and cynical about Islam now began to have a deep admiration. More than that, Pierre felt that Islam filled the spiritual void that he had ignored. As a boxer, he was indeed disciplined, but inwardly he felt empty. There was no direction in life, not knowing what all those achievements were for, and Islam gives him the answer. Pierre's spiritual journey did not happen overnight. He was once hit by extraordinary confusion and inner turmoil. How could he, who had always stood at the forefront of anti-Islam, now be interested in the religion that he used to hate? He began to be alone more often. He reflected, thinking, asking himself, is this just a momentary emotion, or is this really God's guidance? Pierre began to dialogue with more Muslims. He attended mosques, listened to sermons, and asked questions directly to the imams. The more he learned, the stronger his conviction that Islam was not only true, but also suited his nature as a human being. Until finally, one day in 2001, Pierre made the biggest decision of his life. With full awareness and conviction, in front of witnesses, he recited the 2 sentences of the Shahada. Ashhadu alla ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. And since then, Pierre Vogel officially became a Muslim. He changed his name to Abu Hamza as a symbol that he was now reborn with a new identity and spirit of life. His decision was certainly not easy. Many of his old friends left him. Some even mocked and ridiculed him. But Pierre did not waver. He knew that guidance was the greatest gift in his life, and no one could take it away from him. Since becoming a Muslim, he felt calmer, his goals clearer, and his life more meaningful. From a boxer who only pursued physical victory, he now pursued a much greater victory, the victory of the heart, soul, and the afterlife. After months of studying Islam in secret, Pierre finally reached a decisive point. His mind was clear, his heart was steady, and his soul was calm. He felt that all this time, he had only been living with the flow, becoming a successful boxer, being praised by people, surrounded by the glitter of the world. But all of that felt empty, until he found the true meaning of life in Islam. Pierre knew that this decision was not a small one. This was not just changing religions. This was a spiritual journey, leaving behind the ego of the past and receiving the light of guidance. Then one day in 2001, in a soft but firm voice, Pierre said, Ashhadu alla ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And since that day, Pierre Vogel officially embraced Islam. He chose the name Abu Hamza as his new identity, a symbol of his new life filled with light and new responsibilities as a Muslim. This decision shocked his surroundings. For his old friends, the news that Pierre, the strong and nationalistic boxer, had converted to Islam was beyond reason. Some laughed sarcastically, some sneered, considering him to have been brainwashed. They said, "How can you, a German boxer, convert to the religion of the Arabs?" Some others could only shake their heads, because they knew that Pierre used to be known to be very anti-Islam. The reaction from his family was no less surprising. Most were disappointed. Some felt ashamed. Some also tried to advise Pierre to return to his previous beliefs. However, Pierre did not waver one bit. He remained polite to his family, but firm in his choice. For Pierre, Islam was not just a new belief. Islam is the answer to his life search. As a new Muslim, Pierre did not immediately appear in public. He spent time seriously studying Islamic teachings. He learned to pray, read the Quran, understand the Creed, and study the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He wanted to know Islam not only on the surface, but to its roots. And just like in the world of boxing, Pierre did it all with high discipline, morning, noon, and night. His time was filled with knowledge. He visited the Ustad. He read many books. He watched lectures by scholars from various countries. Not only that, Pierre also started learning Arabic so he could understand the Quran and Hadith directly from the original source. Wanted to be a Muslim who not only believes Wash but also understands. His enthusiasm amazed many people. But of course, the path was not always easy. Pierre faced many challenges. Apart from family and old friends, Pierre also began to receive pressure from the wider community, especially amidst rising Islamophobic sentiment in Europe. As a convert, he was suspected. As a German Muslim, he was considered a cultural traitor. And as a former public figure, he was always in the media spotlight. But precisely in the midst of all that, Pierre felt that these tests were part of the process of faith. That being a Muslim meant being ready to be tested. And for him, every insult only increased his enthusiasm to uphold the truth. Pierre also realized one important thing, that many people in Germany misunderstood Islam, just like he used to. That was what finally drove him to preach, not by preaching, but by sharing experiences. He knew how Germans thought, he knew the types of questions they asked, and he knew that logic and honesty were the two main keys to touching their hearts. Pierre began to appear in open discussions, giving lectures in city parks, until finally forming a larger Dawah community in Germany. Now, years after his decision to pronounce the Shahada, Pierre Vogel, alias Abu Hamza, has become an icon of Islamic Dawah in Germany. He is widely known, admired by some, feared by others. But one thing is certain, he is no longer a boxer in the ring, but a fighter in the Dawah field who tirelessly defends the religion of Allah. And all of that started from one big decision, taken alone, armed with honesty of heart and sincerity in seeking the truth. Now, years after his decision to pronounce the Shahada, Pierre Vogel, or better known as Abu Hamza, has become an icon of Islamic Dawah in his homeland, Germany. He is no longer known as a talented young boxer with an undefeated record, but as a loud defender of Islam, facing stigma and slander from a country that has not fully understood the religion he brought. Pierre Vogel's name now appears in many discussions, debates, and even scientific research. In the book Islamic Movements of Europe, his name is mentioned in the chapter on Salafism in Germany as one of the most influential figures in spreading Islam openly and vocally in the West. He is widely known, admired by converts, young people, and minority Muslims who need defending. But on the other hand, he is also feared and hated by groups who have long felt disturbed by the rise of Islam in Europe. Pierre knows very well that the field of preaching is not a comfortable place, but he still stands. Because for him, this is not about popularity or sensation, but about truth, courage, and sacrifice. Today, Abu Hamza does not only preach through the pulpit and mosque, he actively spreads Dawah through social media, video lectures, interfaith dialogues, and open discussions in public spaces. What makes Pierre Vogel different is his straightforward and frank Dawah style. He doesn't beat around the bush. He speaks with logic, arguments, and courage. He knew that his audience was the critical and rational German public, so his approach was adjusted, rational, scientific, and systematic. Not a few Germans who initially came to refute actually returned with trembling hearts and open minds. From year to year, hundreds to thousands of Germans have recited the Shahada through the guidance or influence of Pierre's lectures. The number is estimated to be more than 1,500 converts who have been born from the preaching process that he pioneered with patience and consistency. But of course, the path to goodness is always full of tests. Pierre Vogel has repeatedly faced pressure from the German government, accusations of spreading radicalism, and even bans on lectures in several cities. The mainstream media did not hesitate to frame his lectures one-sidedly. The labels radical Salafi, hardline Islamist, and even provocateur have been pinned on him. But Pierre never responded emotionally. He always answered with open explanations and scientific arguments. If you want to know the true teachings of Islam, come to me. We will sit and discuss. But do not judge Islam only from fear and hatred. That is more or less Pierre's message in many of his public dialogues. Now, Abu Hamza has become a symbol of change, a symbol of hope, and a symbol that guidance can come to anyone. He proved that no matter how hard someone is against Islam, if his heart is honest in seeking the truth, Allah will guide him. In the past, he hated Islam. Now he fights for it with all his soul. In the past, he fought in the ring for the championship belt. Now he fights in the field of preaching for the pleasure of Allah and the salvation of the people. He often said, "I used to want to be a world boxing champion, but now I just want to be an upright servant of Allah. I don't need a belt, I need heaven." Pierre Vogel's story is not just a story of conversion, but a story of the awakening of the heart, a story of a sincere journey of search, and a story of how a man, in the midst of the glitz of Europe, dared to say, "Allah is sufficient as my Lord." Pierre Vogel is an example that faith is not an inheritance, but a choice fought for. And his decision to embrace Islam has given birth to a wave of change whose impact is felt to this day. May Allah protect Abu Hamza, strengthen his steps, and make him a means of guidance for thousands of other souls. And may we all be inspired to continue learning, seeking the truth, and never be afraid to fight for it, even if we have to walk alone, because guidance is expensive, and not everyone has the courage to accept it. This is the story of Pierre Vogel, a tough boxer who used to judge Islam from afar, but finally found the light of truth when he wanted to approach, read, and humble his heart. He proved that guidance knows no boundaries, does not choose race, skin color, or background. That anyone, if his heart is honest in seeking the truth, then Allah will guide him, step by step, towards the straight path. Pierre Vogel has exchanged the World Championship title for the title of Servant of Allah. He left popularity for the sake of the safety of the afterlife, and he chose to stand in the ranks of truth, even though he had to be alone. Today, he is not just a convert, but a light for many souls in the midst of darkness. A real proof that Islam is not just a religion, but a way of life that calms the heart and elevates human dignity. May this story be a reminder to us all that faith is a gift and maintaining it is a struggle. And may we, like Abu Hamza, dare to say to the world, "I have found the truth and I will live and die with it." Friends of Islamic Explanation, hopefully this video is useful. See you in the next video. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.